Hi. Before we get into this podcast, I just needed to put out a quick apology message. Unfortunately, Stuart's microphone was having some technical issues during the first 10 minutes of recording, so it's a bit rustly and difficult to listen to. We can only apologise for that. However, if you just stick with it, it will get better after that. And if you can't, please just skip past it. Without further ado, let's get into the podcast.
Welcome to the Movie Pro Podcast. This podcast may contain rambling, foolishness, and spoilers. Duh.
Hello and welcome to Movie Probe, another episode. This is episode 15. Can you imagine? 15 episodes, 15 weeks. Anyway, my name is Martin Cowan, one of the hosts, and I'm here with my best friend in the world and co-host, Stuart Ryan Cinnamon.
Yes, it's me, a hunk of burning love. How are you today, Martin?
I'm actually pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm not.
Pretty good.
I've had quite a quiet
Enjoying
day.
that cup of tea there.
I am. I have a nice wee cup of tea next to me to get me through.
Get you through.
But yeah, no, I've had a pretty relaxing day. Nice weather, so yeah, pretty sound. What about yourself?
Yeah, I just went a walk. I made a horrible decision of going out in a hoodie and like tracky bottoms, but like not breathable tracky bottoms.
Oh
so
dear!
I was a sweaty mess by the time I came in. A sweaty boy. I sweated a lot. I can tell you that. Oh boy.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
that's about it. That's sort of same as you. I had a wee chill.
Yeah, I went for a walk
and just went with it.
Yeah, I went for a wee walk as well. In my new top that I bought yesterday. My wee
Oh, did you? Showing it off to the people.
Inter Miami home top. So yeah.
Alright, very fashionable. Very fashionable.
I know. I felt trendy. I don't know if I looked it, but I felt trendy. Anyway.
Oh, the fact that you used the word trendy there, kinda. You know.
Yeah. Well.
Right, shall we get into Stu's news?
Well, I think we shall. Let's jump straight in to what's happening in the world of cinema this week, Stuart.
Got a lot to talk about this week, Martin. A lot to talk about. So, kicking it off. Apparently, we have a director for the Captain Marvel sequel.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Nia DaCosta. She's also directed a lot of indie films such as Littlewoods and The Black Girl Dies Last, as well as multiple episodes of the crime drama Top Boy.
Okay,
so that's due out in 2022.
I don't think I've heard of any of those shows. I don't think, or movies. I don't think I know.
I've not heard of any of the films. I've heard of Top Boy. Top Boy's it's on Netflix.
Right. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, at least they have a director attached now to that.
Yep. So that's attached to that as well. Bill and Ted's been brought forward a week, apparently.
Oh. What date's that again?
Well, according to this, it's going to be released on August the 28th.
Oh, so it's soon then.
Yep. So that'll be by the end of the month. John Wick 4 and 5 are going to be shot back to back.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so glad they're making a fifth one as well. They're making them into like
Fast and Furious.
I was gonna say Fast and Furious length story, like movie series. They're now up to 5. I mean, who knows? I don't know what they're planning. They might be planning on doing 4 and 5 and finishing off the story. Who knows? Or they might just keep it going. Who knows? I'm looking forward to it. You still have not seen John Wick, so
any of them?
Yeah, you've not seen any of them. So yeah. I don't want to say anything about it in case I don't want to ruin it for you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the John Wicks.
To the future John Wicks. Raise a glass.
Raise a glass to John Wick.
Right, enough of that. That was like 3 weeks ago, that podcast.
But in my heart.
So more news. Yep, in your heart, it's just lived there ever since. But more news. Antebellum, which was I think a film that Jordan Peele was on to produce. That's going to be going straight to VOD now. It's not getting a cinematic release, and
All
that's going
right.
to be released on VOD services on September the 18th.
And see, this is
So
the
that's
thing.
disappointing,
This,
but
yeah. Well, am I right in saying that's one of the horror ones that we spoke about?
yeah, it looks. I don't think it's horror. I think it's a psychological drama.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
So yeah, this is where normally if something was announced that it's going straight to video on demand, you'd be like, oh, it must mean it's not going to be very good. But nowadays you can't tell.
yeah.
Nowadays it's just like, whoa, it's just because of the cinemas and that potentially they've decided they'll make more money on the movie by putting it that way. So it's no longer a gauge of how good the film's going to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. I think it'll be a good film. It stars Janelle Monáe, who's a very talented actress. So, yeah, it'll be one that I'll pick up if it's on the Netflix or the Amazon or whatever. It'll be one that I keep my eye out for.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Sounds like it's up your street.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so as well as that, next piece of news, not Gareth, Garth Davis has been confirmed to direct a new Tron movie with Jared Leto.
Oh, okay. I've never seen either of the Tron movies, actually.
I have seen the first one, not the first one, the
Legacy.
2010 one, yeah, but I don't really remember it. But we have Disney Plus, so there we go.
Yeah, we can certainly catch up on that before that hits the cinemas, if it hits the cinemas.
Yeah, I think it's a while off yet. I think I'll see if there's a date on here. There isn't even a date for it as of yet. So, but if you're expecting, if it's got a director and Jared Leto attached, I reckon you'll probably look at 2022 maybe.
Yeah. Sounds likely.
Probably late to summer or summer to late 2022, I think. Last piece of news now. We kind of already spoke about this in general. But yeah, it angers me. It's something that has really angered me
Okay, hit me.
recently, and I've spoke to a few people. So, for those of you who don't know or haven't seen the news, obviously Mulan, the Disney remake of Mulan, was supposed to be released in cinemas end of August, beginning of September, something like that. Disney have now come out and made an announcement. They took it off their slate and then were kind of like, oh, well, that's it. We don't know what's happening with it. So then they announced, just after we recorded the podcast last week, that you are going to be able to buy the movie on Disney Plus for $30.
Shocking.
So apparently it says here, will be able to watch as long as you have the Disney. Yeah, once purchased, will be able to watch the film as long as you have the Disney Plus subscription. Will you be renting Mulan for $30 on Disney Plus on top of your paid prescription?
No, I certainly will not. You can blooming shove it.
It's not even to buy. It's not even to buy. So it's like somebody's put in the comment there. Is that just to rent it? So like have it for like one watch or like
so
whatever.
This is what they're.
I believe so.
No, well, what they're saying is that you pay your $30 or whatever that translates to in the UK, 20 something pounds, to get access to Mulan on Disney Plus. Once you've paid that, you can watch it as many times as you want forever on Disney Plus, provided you maintain your Disney Plus subscription, is what they're saying. But it's still an absolute joke. It's still an absolute joke that they're not releasing it in the cinemas. I believe they said they were only releasing it in cinemas in countries that don't have Disney Plus. Am I right? Yeah. So, but in every country that has Disney Plus, they're not giving it a cinema release, forcing you, if you want to see the film, to pay that money, which is mad for a film that I think the majority of people aren't that bothered about. I think, quite a lot of people would like to see it. I would like to see it, and I'm more than happy to go and see it in the cinema, especially being a Limitless card holder. I can see it for next to nothing, just for my price of my subscription for my card, I would happily go see it, and I'd probably quite enjoy it. But I'm a what paying over £20 just to watch it and keep it on Disney Plus? No chance. I just think it's ridiculous.
And see, the argument there is obviously a family of four. You know, if they go to the cinema, the tickets alone, I mean, for tickets for two of them is about 20 quid, which is the argument there. But for the average Joe Blogs, like you and me and whatever, so, like, who will go ourselves or watch it ourselves or whatever, then it's not, you know, it's not financially viable. Like, I'll just wait until eventually it does come out, or eventually is released for free, because they're not going to have it to rent like at that price for the rest of time, obviously. But there's so much less rush for me to do it. But you know, and it'd be a film that we would have probably had in the podcast.
We definitely would have done it on the podcast. And
but I refuse to do that. I refuse to pay.
I agree.
Extra money, and that may sound snobby, that may sound snooty or whatever. But I think if you're paying for a subscription,
I agree.
A service, you shouldn't then, especially when that's not said as a thing that's going to be happening.
Yeah.
And they've released so much stuff for free anyway. Like, well, not for free, but for your subscription.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point.
You know,
they've released a platform literally last year. Was the big launch of Disney Plus. And one of the big things is that all of their stuff, all of their movies will eventually go onto that platform. They'll hit the cinemas first, and then they'll go in there. And there'll still be some Disney Plus exclusive movies, and there'll still be Disney Plus exclusive series, as we know. Then the fact that they're going, oh, well, because the cinemas aren't open, we're not going to give Mulan a cinema release. And instead of giving their customers the grace and the incentive to actually get Disney Plus or keep Disney Plus, or for people to go, oh, that's really good that they've just put that on Disney Plus for all the people that are subscribing to them, considering apparently they'd hit, now don't quote me on the exact figure, but it was something like their 5-year goal in the first year or something of subscribers numbers already. So they're doing fantastically well money-wise for Disney Plus. And they're still going, nah, we're gonna force people to pay extra money if they want to see that. And then it raises the question, will they ever, now that they've done this, will they ever release it for free on Disney Plus over time? Because then surely does that become unfair for the people who've already paid for it? Like, how does that work? How does it work?
I think a lot of it is going to depend on how much they actually make from this. Obviously, it's a win-win from them. It's kind of best worst case scenario for them, in the sense of, if it doesn't make a lot of money, then it doesn't publicly get slammed, because they can just use the excuse of, oh, well, it must just be that people didn't want, you know, people couldn't afford to stream it or whatever. But I think the reason we get annoyed with it more than anything is because we are now in a position where we can go and see films in a cinema.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
the cinemas have now opened again.
They could put it on Disney Plus, and but they could easily just go along to the cinema, which may happen. You never know. Yeah. You never know. It might have a cinematic release in the UK.
If it gets released in the cinemas at the same time as on Disney Plus, then I won't have an issue with it, because it gives me the option to go to the cinema and see it. And then if I want to pay for it to watch it home, because of whatever reason, say there's people still shielding or who don't feel comfortable going to the cinemas and still want to see it, it gives them the option, and I agree with that, and that's fine. But my major issue comes if it doesn't get a release in the cinema and it's solely available on Disney Plus, and I have to pay an extra 20, 22, 25, whatever it is, pounds to view it, then that's what I have the issue with.
We'll just have a house party. We'll have a Mulan viewing party and invite 40 people, and they can pay 50p.
Here, officially, because of social distancing, that's a really bad idea at the moment. But yeah, that's a money spinner.
I might get it gone.
£2 per entry.
Yeah, you say that. No, you can have a maximum of 50 people gathering. You know.
To be honest, I've
In
not checked
fact,
the
in
latest.
fact, I spent the past week at the caravan. Well, not the past week. I spent a few days at the caravan. I bet you there wasn't under 50 people in that entertainment bit.
Well, get
I never went in
get
it, but
Nick
I
get
looked past the window.
get Nicola on the phone.
Aye. So it might be more than 50, but obviously we're just watching a movie. There's no singing or what, so and everything would be socially distanced. So it might be a
Yeah.
shout.
Who knows?
It genuinely
Who
might be a
knows?
shout.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll get a few.
we'll
We'll get a
see.
couple of social bubbles together, and we'll see what happens.
What it could be? Oh. Get big Margaret Cooper, ask for a giant bed sheet, and we'll project it on a thing, and we'll have a big we'll have a drive-in at the up the top park. Here, that'd be class.
When you said get Margaret Cooper to get a big bed sheet, I was thinking like, why don't he ask Margaret for a big bed sheet, and that for the event?
Now
got
you understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can have a drive-in, you can have some food vendors. See, I've got it all worked out.
There you go.
Get M&D's on the phone.
Wow.
Anyway, so we did mention there at a point that the cinemas are back open over here, and we went, Martin.
We did.
We went. For you guys, we didn't go for the good of our health, obviously. We went for you guys, obviously, not for ourselves, obviously.
Obviously, because are we reviewing that film today?
No, are we ding?
No, we're not. Okay, we went for ourselves, but we went to. That's a lie. It's a little lie. We went to test it for our listeners to let you know what our experience was from being back at the cinema.
Yes. So here's what happens. This is what happens specifically at an Odeon. You rock up. You have to wear a mask. From walking into the gaff to sitting down in your seat. So once you're sat down in your seat, you can then take your mask off.
Yep.
You walk. So if we're walking in, so where's ours is where we go isn't like its own building. It's built into a shopping centre.
Yeah.
So you walk in, and they've got it. The way they've got it laid out is that you have to walk straight up to the counter. Like you can't, go to the toilet. You can't just jump into the toilet, or there's no sitting about like there used to be and things like that.
Yeah, because they used to
machines-
have like the tables sitting around the place you can sit down, and all of those are gone. You've got your barriers, your walkway straight up to the desk, where you have a sanitizing station and track and trace forms as well.
Yeah. So you have to fill out the track and trace form. Basically, what the one at Odeon, it asks for your name, your number, what film you're going to see, and what time the screening is. That's what it asks you.
And then you put it in a very unsafe bucket, in which anyone can pick out and read your name.
Yeah, that is that's one part I don't like about it, but that probably varies from site to site. And
It probably does, and to
over
be
time.
fair, they would argue that it's in direct sight of all of their staff right in front, so
Yeah.
they would be watched.
Yeah. So yeah, after that, you can still buy food. I did see somebody ask at one point when we posted the photo if you could still buy food and drink and that. You can still buy food and drinking and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much just a normal cinematic experience. You go in, they have a table in front of where they normally check your tickets. They ask you to put your ticket on the table just so they can check it, and then off you go into your screen.
Yep, that's right, and also the seating is socially distanced in that sense. So when you book with your party, so me and Stuart was one party, so we sat next to each other, and
it was some party.
And then the seat next to you, obviously in the cinema we go to, is the Odeon Lux, which is the recliner seats, and they're kind of in sets of two. So the next set of two that's next to you is greyed out on the booking form, and no one can book in there. So and then it's the next party after that. So you're socially distanced from other people in the screen as well.
But what's really annoying is when if you want to pre-book beforehand, you can't, you have to all book on the one booking. So for example, like me and Martin are both Limitless card holders, which makes it an absolute ache because um, when you're a limitless card holder, you can only book on the one account. So I would have to book a seat, which would then socially distance the seats beside me, so Martin couldn't book it. So it ends up taking up more. And whilst, yeah, you could argue you could get more space for yourself, but it is a bit of a
Yeah, I mean,
annoyance.
we were able to go in and just ask them, and they were able to do it then and there.
Yeah, they can sort it out for you there.
Yeah.
But in terms of pre-booking, like if, say, for example, you're planning a date night,
Oh.
and yep, you're planning a date night or something like that, and you're like, oh, I'll buy. Me and my missus are both limitless card holders. Then you're probably not my missus. I don't have a Mrs. Martin. I know what that look was about.
No, that look was the missus. I was like, that's awful presumptuous on a potential first date. I know you said date night, so it could be couples.
Said a date.
Yeah.
So Mrs., Mr., whatever, are both limitless card holders. Then you would have to go into the place and do it, because you wouldn't be able to do it on the actual app unless you are comfortable taking up 2 extra seats that you don't need to take, taking 4 seats when you actually only need to take 2.
Yep.
So.
And that's pretty much the only real changes.
Yeah.
We saw the movie.
You watch the film, you leave, and then that's it. Like you, I don't know. How did you feel? Like the whole way through? Like how did you feel?
I felt fine. I'm not that apprehensive about going out or anything during the virus.
I know you're
anyway.
coughing on Nev Day in front of you and all sorts.
I am not. But yeah, so generally, unless there's someone who's visibly ill in the screen, which is highly unlikely because you wouldn't be out in that sense, and if somebody was, you'd report it. But yeah, I generally felt fine because I mean, you are literally maybe 3 or 4 meters away from the nearest person, maybe 3 meters.
Yeah. I mean, we were in a film that was like a quiet movie.
It was quiet.
How it's going to be when like a Tenet or something like that comes out might be,
It might be different. Yeah, it might be a bit different,
yeah.
But at the same time, I still think with the social distancing in, I don't feel like you'd be close to anyone.
No.
Really. I didn't feel because they have all the measures in place. I felt perfectly safe, and I didn't feel. It'd be different if I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's been thought out, but I feel like all the measures are in place, and because they also have track and trace, you've got all their different like markings on the ground and everything. Yeah, I felt fine. What about you? How did you feel being in the cinema?
Yeah, I felt fine. Obviously, I've been going I've worked for the whole thing. I've been in shops the whole thing. I've had several meals out whilst in the past couple of weeks or so, whilst we've been able to do that. So my life's kind of pretty much been back to normal. The only thing I did find with myself, is that I was very wary about what I should do with my rubbish.
Yeah.
Because normally, this is just anywhere I go now. So whether I'm on, a train or a bus or something, in the cinema, there's 2 types of people who work there. There were people who would rather you take your rubbish with you and put it in their own bin, or there's people who would rather you keep it on a nice wee pile on the seat. I'm very much of the nice wee pile on the seat because I'm cleaning the whole screen anyway. So just as long as it's not you've no spilt popcorn all over the floor. Other than that, I don't mind doing a whip round and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was very much oh, should I take this? Should I leave it? Because obviously it's got water droplets on it because I've been drinking out of it and what. So I was ooh, yeah. I did end up taking it and just putting it in the bin. But yeah.
Do they have any signs asking you to do anything with rubbish? I didn't see any. No. I don't think. I think they'll probably just handle it with gloves, and they'll have their PPE stuff.
They'll probably be going in with a mask, gloves, and an apron. That'll probably be what they clean the screens with. If you work in the cinema industry and listen to this, messages, let us know how you've been doing cleaning screens and whatnot, because obviously you're handling other people's rubbish. Yeah, obviously you're handling people's rubbish, and I know from my experience of working in there, it's not the most hygienic job. and people are quite messy. I'll just leave it at messy.
We've not d-
But yeah,
yeah,
no, I thought it was grand. I'm looking forward to the next trip. Our cinemas are only open at the weekends at this moment. Here,
yeah.
at East
Friday,
Kilbride,
Saturday, Sunday, right?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yes. But we don't. I don't think there's anything new out. Inception's out. Inception's on this weekend.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've seen it. I still want to see that pickle movie. Um, but also, um, just a wee kind of announcement for us as a podcast. We will start. We will be starting to review new movies that we've seen in the cinema come September. So from our first podcast in September, it should be, unless there's something that goes on between then and September. But because Tenet is the first big movie that comes out, and that comes out the 26th of August, which is when the last of our section of podcasts that we're
Yeah.
doing now will go out, and then the week after that. So I think it might be I don't know. I've not got a calendar on me, so the 3rd maybe of September.
Whatever Wednesday's the first Wednesday in September will be
Yeah,
then.
that's a better way to do it.
But yeah,
So
we
yeah,
didn't want to.
and it'll probably be Tenet.
Yeah, as I say, because the cinemas, even though they are opening now, there's not a load of new releases coming out.
Yeah.
We don't really know any consistency with that
Well,
as well. So we
put-
know that the first big
put
release.
it this way.
What?
The film we went to see was Unhinged, with Russell Crowe,
Yeah.
and it came up at the beginning, a Sky Cinema production, and I was just like, oh, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel to get something on here.
Yeah. So yeah, because of that, we're gonna wait until the first big release, which is Tenet, and then after that, we think there's quite a few following it. So we should be okay to, from the start of September, start reviewing the movies that are in the cinema. Up until then, we will continue with this format of picking movies that the other one has not seen, and talking about that.
Well, just before we do that, in those weeks where there's maybe nothing out, Martin and I will discuss. We'll either do like a wee, just a chatty one about us and our movies and stuff like that, or we will put it to an audience's choice. I think is where the route we're going to go down. So I think there are maybe 2 or 3 where there's like nothing out. Either that, or we'll just take a holiday.
Yeah, as I say, the most likely what we'll probably do is put it to a vote. We'll maybe either we'll pick a few and put it to a poll, or we'll maybe just put it out there and ask for comments, and whatever comments comes through,
and
we'll
whatever
tackle.
says the most.
So we'll see how that goes, but we'll tackle that bridge when we get to it.
Yep. Anyway, as you were talking about, we are now doing films that the other hasn't seen, and this week my film for you was the seminal classic, 2015, I think it came out, La La Land.
La La Land, that is correct.
Yep. And yes, it was La La.
It was La La. I made
and the rest of the Teletubbies.
I made a stupid joke this morning. I went, so there's Tinky Winky Land, Dipsy Land, there's La La Land, and my favourite, Poland. Anywho, La La Land.
Can we just clarify, for those of you who haven't worked out who's last who's yet, that was fully him. I didn't even move. My face didn't even change.
He was
In fact,
he
it
was
did change, but
stifling a
it
laugh.
was very much
He was stifling a laugh.
No, I wasn't. I was nowhere near. But yeah, very interesting movie, La La Land, isn't it?
It is.
But you can never work out if it's in a good way or a bad way.
Well, this is a thing. I don't know if you want me to talk first about my initial thoughts, or if you want to talk, because you've obviously the one who's seen it before.
Well, normally we kind of open up with some questions, but I actually think it's one of those films that the more you watch it, the different interpretations you get out of stuff.
Quite possibly.
And so I watched it today, and got stuff that I'd never got out of it
All
before.
right, okay.
Just relating to different things. But obviously, we'll come to those as we hit. But just yeah, kick us off. Give us some sort of thought that that you either liked or didn't like, or what the crack was. What did you think of it as a whole?
Yeah, so this is the thing. As I already said last week, I had never seen this film before, but I had seen like YouTube videos that have kind of told me what the ending was, like the very final scene. So
Yeah,
I knew where it was going, which obviously would change my um, perception of the film, because if I didn't know what was going to happen at the end, I would be viewing it different. But because I did,
yeah.
I viewed the whole film in a different light. So that I need to put that out there first before
You're always
I
going, how do I get to that? How did we
yeah
get to this
yeah
point? You were kind of working
yeah
at.
and
Yeah,
and obviously for anyone listening, there's going to be major spoilers. Just this is the spoiler warning, obviously, for La La Land, because obviously at the end I knew that they weren't going to be together. I knew that before I went in to
yeah,
go watch the film. So while I'm watching
yeah,
the happy moments and the really good moments of their relationship, I'm knowing that it's ending badly. So
yeah,
it was an interesting watch for me, as a first time viewer, but knowing that. But I have to say, I think this was a good film,
mm-hmm,
but one of those ones that I feel you need to be in a certain mood for, and it's also
yeah,
very, obviously very artsy, and it's very like
yeah,
Oscar bait sort of film. Um, but I felt it was it done it 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 was made in a really smart and made it was made well, in the sense of there was obviously a lot of heavy leaning on the genre of jazz in the movie, um,
mm-hmm,
and the score and the music throughout the film I feel was deliberately um, very what I've basically this is the theme I have throughout the whole film, is that this film is very happy sad,
yeah,
and what's the other note I've put, um, this is something I put towards the end, but yeah. So I said this movie is happy slash sad, filled with somber happiness,
yeah,
and I just found it a really interesting tone of a film that I don't think I've ever seen a film that has ridden this such a, like you say, this happy somberness. Like they're singing certain happy songs, but in almost like in a minor key the whole time, and there's this very strange tone and feeling throughout the whole movie, which when you find out what happens at the end, you can see how the whole thing balances really well and what's going
yeah,
on. But I just found it a really interesting film, and I can understand why some people will love it and some people will hate it.
mm,
I get that. I just was in an interesting place of this is good, but don't. I'm not happy with how it ends, because I don't want it to end like that. But it's
yeah,
meant to make you feel
yeah,
like that. So I just found it a very
yeah,
interesting one, and I'm still trying to process my own thoughts and feelings behind it, because I'm like, there's
mm,
a lot of likes about it, but because of the way it's made, there's this whole almost like this thing inside you, this longing for it to work, but it's not. It's almost like it's not going to work
yeah,
because of how it's made. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have a lot of
And
conflicting
I
thoughts.
think, yeah. So I like that you kind of pointed that out in the sense of we'll come on to that later in terms of talking about the ending and how you expect it to end out and how it actually ends out. But I just want to talk to you. You mentioned and touched on the way it was made and the tone. So
Yeah,
obviously a lot of it was, like you say, it was a love letter to jazz. It was kind of a lovely letter to the old style of Hollywood movie musicals, like your Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire kind of movies. And you kind of get that from the outset, literally with the first kind of credits come up,
yeah,
that there's going to be this mishmash of old and new, which is kind of what jazz, or what the Sebastian is trying to make jazz as. He's trying to bring it into the new age
yeah,
and stuff. And even through the opening, you can see it's an amalgamation of old and new, because when during the first song, when they're all on the freeway and they have like the dances and they have the dance circle, there's like so many different styles of dance as well. There's like old school kind of style of dance that goes on the whole way through, and then there's this bit in the middle where there's like a breakdown, ooh, um, kind of
Yeah,
dance.
yeah.
Um, and it's you're definitely right with it being a very artsy film. I think people who are in the arts relate to it a lot.
Mm.
You see from the beginning how hard each industry is, where she's turning up and she's one white ginger lassie in a crowd of 1,000 white ginger
Yeah, yeah.
lassies and all wearing the same thing, and then he struggles because he's really into music, which a type of music which other people see as dying off, um, and things like that. And I think that obviously at the beginning, there's they're both the way it's kind of displayed. Pardon me, sorry, is you see her at the beginning, and it reaches a certain point, and then it goes back to the same point, and then goes through his journey. So you
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
two
yeah, yeah.
separate journeys to them getting to the certain point. To I think his end point is when he's playing in the club, in the
That's
little
right.
when he's playing all
That's
the
right.
Christmas songs with J.K. Simmons.
Yes. I thought
Yeah,
that was him.
yeah. And then he can't help but play jazz, and essentially that's what that kind of gets him fired. Um, but there's different stuff that was great. Well, I thought was great throughout this. I mean, I like the one of my favorite bits is the fashion. I really like the clothing, which is something we don't really talk about on this podcast, but
Not really, but
I
I
did
get what
really
you're
like.
saying. There was
Yeah,
certain bits, especially the bit that immediately stands out to me is near the beginning when Mia Mia
yep,
Mia
Mia.
um is like in her room and all her flatmates or housemates are all gonna be going out, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm rehearsing, I'm working," and it's like, "No, get your dress on," and they all go out, and
Uh,
is that those colors in the dresses that all sort of like are
they're
striking, but
all
all
bright.
complement each other together, and you're
Yeah,
like, that sort of fashion, very striking. I was just like, so I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah. Well, I mean, even on a personal level, I like a lot of what Ryan Gosling's character Seb wore. Um, I have a pair of shoes which are very similar to the ones he wears in the film, and that was because of the film I went and bought them. Because I really liked them. They're kind of I can't even I knew didn't know the official names, but they're like brogues, but they're like part white, part
Right.
black. So I always thought they were cool. Um, but yeah, there's a tap sequence in it. I love a good tap sequence.
You're right.
That whole song actually, yeah, that the songs in general. What was your feelings on the orchestrations in the songs? Obviously, you kind of touched on it a little bit by saying
Mm.
that but what is your actual kind of thought on the one side the lyrical songs and then the other side the orchestrations?
Well, the songs in terms of like the lyrical songs weren't what I expected, because I all I knew was that they were written by the same people who wrote for The Greatest Showman. And even though I knew
Yeah,
that it wouldn't be like The Greatest Showman, I knew it's a completely different thing. But I don't. I mean, maybe it's because I watched it for the first time or what, but there's nothing. I didn't particularly sit and go, these songs are great, or really like I could really sing that
yeah,
song. There was nothing like that that stood out to me. But I don't know if that was written in a deliberate way for whatever reason. Like one of the ones they keep repeating is like his song that him and Emma Stone sort of sing, and it's very sort of almost like it.
City of Stars.
Yes, and
City of
yeah.
Stars, how you shine.
What I
Yeah.
found really interesting is the choice of how that was sung most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't really like "City of Stars." Da, 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 da.
Ah,
Yeah, it was very. It was
hey,
almost like yeah. it was almost like mumbled at first. It's that kind of and it sort of kind of very gradually becomes more of a thing, but it
Mm.
still was never like properly like sung out. It was kind of very. I mean, it's clearly an artistic choice, and there's clearly reasons behind it, which is why I just find this movie really interesting because
Yeah.
I don't think any apart from like the proper like one at the beginning and there's like certain bits which are like song and dance. There's not a lot of that in it. A lot of the songs
Yeah.
just kind of come out of conversations and then they kind of start singing, but it's never really a performance or much of a performance. Some of it is, but I feel like the
Yeah.
ones that are more performancey or more dance performancey than singing performancey, and that's what I found
Yeah.
very interesting about this because a lot of the
Mhm.
songs were like singy, showy. I know that's a
Yeah.
technical term, but
No,
but
I
you know what I
understand what you
mean?
mean, but it's almost like so songs and musicals are obviously used to like further the plot. Um, I think they didn't want like they obviously wanted to use the songs to do such a thing, but I don't feel like that was like the main reason. Like they wanted the plot to be the main story to be the relationship and how it worked around the relationship. I don't think this it was used to further the plot as such. Um, but all of the one thing I did like is like all of those scenes, even the orchestrational ones with like when they're in the planetarium at the end.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think all of them are visually stunning.
yeah. I think a lot of the orchestration and the visuals go hand in hand really well and create and tell the story, and a lot of it's told through
The
dance
music,
and
yeah,
through the music,
yeah,
which is interesting because I mean it reminds me of ballet in that sense because ballet is just dance and the whole story is told through dance,
yeah,
and it's something I've never really experienced because I've never actually watched ballet, despite my mum being an ex ballet dancer.
yeah,
Um, but I've never really watched dance and understood a story just through watching dance. So it was very interesting to watch, especially like the scene early on when they first kind of meet and they're up looking out over the city and they're on the bench and they're doing all that.
yeah.
That was
That's my favorite
it's a
sequence.
great
Yeah, it's one
sequence,
of my favorite
great
sequences.
sequence, and it told the story really well. Obviously, there was obviously some singing in it and talk dialogue between them to portray part of a story, but
Mm,
kind of the vocals and the words were saying, "Oh yeah, there's no spark between us." But
yeah,
all of the dance and the actions were proving something completely
the
different.
same,
And I
definitely.
just found it
Yeah,
really interesting to watch that story through dance, and for nothing more to be said apart from that and like a knowing look between each other that there is something there. And I've just
mm,
found it very interesting. It's a very interesting film if you're into that kind of thing. I think,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, So obviously the main kind of obviously the whole film is about their relationship, the ups, the downs, and stuff like that. I think it actually is about relationship versus career as such at
Yeah,
points as
yeah,
well, but mainly the relationship. So obviously, I I don't know. I was watching it this time around, and I was like, do they actually like each other, or are they just like impressed and excited at each other's talents, like they see the job in them? So there's a line that he says at one point to her where it's like, well, maybe you just like me because it made you feel maybe you like me when I was down on my ass because it made you feel better about yourself and stuff like that. And part of me thinks, well, is there actually something in that? Is that actually true? Because, like you say, in the beginning, like there is like they do meet each other beforehand.
yeah, yeah,
When was it? He meet like before he sees her playing the piano, before she sees him playing the piano.
yeah,
Like other than it's only when she sees him playing the piano that's when stuff
yeah.
changes.
But that's what I find. Like, because you were saying obviously about the line that he says, "Oh, maybe you just like me when I was a down and out to make you feel good about
Yeah,
yourself." But the reason why I think that is a load of rubbish is because when you see her being first attracted or interested in him is when he's not being a down and out, is when he's being extremely talented on a piano. He was
yeah,
impressive to her and then obviously after that, she sees him getting laid off, and then there's all that stuff afterwards about at the party and things. But I don't know. I don't see it like that. I don't. I mean, there probably is an element of that, but I still think they have a genuine love for each other. And I think that is also echoed towards the end of the film when they're sitting on the bench, almost having the relationship talk, like, where are we at?
Yeah,
And
when they have their amicable breakup.
and she says to him, "Oh, look, I'll always love you," and I think in that itself, it kind of says that there is something deep between them. I just think, from my point of view, and I think the movie sets us up towards the end as well, through that closing sequence, is that they could have been really happy together if they made different choices, and if they made different choices, they could have. The montage at the end shows almost like the alternate. Well, if actually they made these choices, this is what could have happened, and it almost shows you like they could have had this really happy life together and ended up in the same place together. But I think the way they also showed it in that montage is that from a couple of simple choices, like if he hadn't have committed solely to, I want to do jazz, but it has to be at this location. If he'd went with her and done jazz in Paris, and both supported each other in that way, they could have had this amazing life. They could have been the ones to have the children together and to live this love life together. But because they made simple choices which may have been in their own heads correct for their careers, they could have had just as successful careers and been in exactly the same place and been together if they had made slight compromises, or and that's what I found really emotionally difficult, because I think the audience want them to be together naturally. I think it's really hard watching that, knowing that they're showing you an alternate future of what could have happened if they'd made these different choices, and they could have had this happy life. And because they haven't, you can see, and through the music, and that's what really hits me, is that happy sad music that in the end in the club, in the jazz club, he sees her and he's playing their song more or less, and he knows that he could have had that, and she knows that they could have had that, and they share that look at the very end and sort of give a sort of nod and understanding and appreciation for one another. But yeah, that's what I found dead emotional, is that ending of.
I think the ending is quite emotional. I think you're right in the sense that I always get a bit of a lump when at that last bit, when he's when his head's in the piano and he's doing when he's playing them notes, that run of notes he plays, the bum 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 bum, and that I always, especially because the way he plays it and the tension in the air, it's just like. Because obviously you're expecting it to go one way, or you've expected it to go one way, you're seeing it, and then you're obviously, this is the breakdown, and you can see how much it's hurting him.
Yeah.
And you can see in her face, like, it does hurt her still.
I think it obviously hurts her, but I think it's to a lesser extent with her at that point, because she's built a life with.
She's got a family,
she's got a man, she's got a kid, she's moved on, and then she sees him again. And she clearly feels, obviously, probably a mixture of emotions, probably feels uncomfortable, probably does feel bad, but he has literally built the club, her sign and everything. That's what struck me as well when she walked into the club, and it's her design on the logo. And that's when she realizes where she is, and that the piano she can hear is going to be. Well, actually, I thought the piano she could hear was going to be him playing, and then it wasn't. It was a different band.
That's a different guy, and then he comes up. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think the whole 5 year later thing would have really shocked me if I didn't know what was coming. If they'd went their separate ways. She's went to Paris to follow this acting career, and he's gonna sort his stuff here, and then it says 5 years later. I think it would have shocked me because I would have thought that it's gonna show them meeting up again in 5 years and then rekindling and having made their careers in that sense. They would have I think, and possibly what a lot of the audience might have thought was coming, was that they would discover that they both reached their highs in their career and realize it's not as good as what they ever wanted, and they would leave that and go and be together again. And a kind of echoing of what she did with her man at the time in the restaurant when he'd invited her to the cinema, and where she kind of heard the music and realized this isn't what she wanted. And then I think there might have been that kind of expectation to then when she walks in to kiss the guy, you just see the back of his head, then it turns around and it's not Ryan Gosling. You're like, oh, and then there's a kid. That's what actually struck me, because I didn't know there was a kid. I didn't know she'd had a kid, and I was just like, oh, darn.
Do you think in that moment when they're like looking at where they are in that time, so obviously they both went on to get their career goals and whatnot, but she's obviously gone on to have a family and kids and whatnot. Do you think that they maybe see that, he sees that she's married, moved on, and he's maybe not kind of moved on? Maybe he's still kind of in that place where he's, always kind of held, he's kind of held out in case she turns up, and then obviously he comes, he sees her with somebody, and then she's evidently happy, and that's what the wry smile is at the end, because he goes, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Like, it's closure. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think it does give him closure for sure. But as I say, I think there's a whole mixture of emotions that happen in a short period of time, because I think there's probably a lot of regret as well in there
in the pair of them. Yeah,
and this thing, obviously, when you get to see the montage and you get to see them sitting looking at their life, having a kid and this other thing, and what their life could have been. It's clearly all that stuff's meant to kind of be, I think it's meant to kind of be going through his head as well, of like what could have been if I hadn't made these choices.
Yeah, I think it's him. Well, part of me thinks it's him playing out to her what it's going to be, because they're obviously on that level where they're so deep entangled by music that he can play and she knows what it means, kind of thing, or what the thought behind it. So there's never been a proven, No,
I think it's open to interpretation
as to why that's in there.
I think it is open to interpretation to an extent. But I agree that what he's playing at the time certainly corresponds to her knowing what's he's feeling. Whether or not it's a case of exactly what he's thinking, it's certainly this is what I'm feeling, and we both know. And it's almost like a tip of the hat to, I see you and this is how I'm feeling, and thank you and goodbye sort of thing. Because
let's have a look at what we could have won.
That's exactly what it is. This is what could have been. We've chosen different paths, and this is where we're at. He has his career, his thing that he's always wanted, but it doesn't seem. This is obviously open to interpretation, but to me, he doesn't seem happy. Like.
Well, he didn't go. I think he didn't go the route he wanted, because obviously he made the wrong sacrifice, and he sacrificed the being in like playing jazz to playing this chart music that John Legend has in play, and I think that's where because obviously the only reason he took the money. Because obviously it was $1,000 a week, and he was thinking about the club. He was thinking about, like, that was his goal.
Yeah, I mean, he lost sight clearly of what he wanted, because the whole reason why he took that job, as you say, was the money, and was because he wanted to provide the dream for her that he wanted to set up this club for himself, but so that they could both have, so that he could have own this business and have a steady income. and
Yeah.
that was the dream. But he then lost sight of why he was doing it once this band became successful and was touring and doing albums. And then because of that, he was spending no time at home, no time with her. And that's when they have the big fight. When they discuss this. And then again, for me, that was hard to watch as well, because when you see a couple that work so well together and love each other so much, and you see the ugly side and you see it all fall apart, that's what is
Yeah.
hard. And just anywhere. So as an audience member, it is difficult to watch it, I think anyway, to watch it happen, and especially when you know that it's not when they're not going to be together in the end. You know it's the beginning of the end. In fact, I have a really
Yeah.
good point I want to talk about.
Okay.
In the sorry, I just scrolled past one of my notes and it made me laugh because it says they do the Mary Poppins and fly. I just found that funny. Anyway, so yeah, the bit I wanted to talk about was that his gig, and this is when I feel visually you get to see the beginning of the decline.
Yep.
Because I've written down that when he starts playing, obviously at first it's all piano and jazzy, and then the full band kicks in, and it's the sound is
And the lights come up, yeah.
and it sounds so different and looks so different to what she was expecting him to sound like, because she clearly hadn't heard them yet. So you can see the look on her face, like, what's this? Like, this isn't what he wanted, and why is he doing this sort of thing? And then the visual's really powerful when he starts playing his like electro keyboard and solo bit, and all the crowd start rushing towards him, and she starts getting pushed back, and you can see that aerial shot of her moving backwards and all the crowd running towards him and her face, and it's this very striking visual that they're starting to separate and she's getting further away.
Yeah, she's getting further away.
And I was just like, wow, that's a powerful imagery. And I thought that was just done really well, and I wanted to bring that up just because it was something that I immediately was like, this is the start of the decline right here.
Yeah.
And then it was like in the next scene, it was when he surprises her for dinner, and then they have their big fight. But that was just, you could just see it happening. Just there was the beginning.
Yeah, I mean they both obviously made, like you say, that's the beginning, but they both obviously made horrible decisions throughout. I mean,
Oh yeah.
The whole him not turning up to her performance and such like that, that's when you kind of go, oh, this is not, we're gonna, sometimes you see like in films that couples are starting to that they'll fix those kind of problems, or those little things, they're just little spanners in the works, but you were just like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I remember through all of these, like when he, like you say, he misses her show. I remember just when she's outside and she's trying to get into the car.
Yeah, and she's like, it's over.
But just before that bit, before she actually says that, the whole time I'm going, he better start groveling, like proper. Like, he needs to be like, I've just had a blooming revelation that I have really, really messed up. I'm changing, like, and being so apologetic as to, I know that I have been made a huge problem, and I know that I have got my priorities wrong, and I'm going to change all of this, and I'm going to put my attention on you because I haven't been, and it's the biggest mistake of my life. That's what he needed to start doing. And even though he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed it, like, he wasn't doing enough to say, like, I need to sacrifice everything. It wasn't the Hail Mary pass because I'm about to lose her. It was a case of, oh, I'm really sorry, and she was just like, no, we're done, and he was just like, what? What do you mean?
See you later.
That's also, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts on it are, but I think one of his major downfalls is that he doesn't fight. He never fought hard enough for her.
I think that's the major thing that throughout, and the only thing he's really ever fought for in his life is jazz.
Yeah.
And nothing, like, I think that's what you kind of see is his first love and his main love is jazz, and her main love is acting. Which you then actually turns, she's actually not a fantastic actor, but she's a great storyteller. And people say that the best actors are the best storytellers, which is why you see a lot of like huge actors go into directing and stuff like that. So obviously they said that they had that going for her. So I don't think they were ever each other's main love. I think that there was other things, but they imprinted on each other's lives really heavily. And
Yeah, I mean, one
that's
thing that
sorry, on you go.
I was just gonna say, one thing that I think happens in this film and is quite um, striking is that both of them inspire one another
Yeah,
to go and to reach the heights in
yeah,
their
they both
careers,
push
and
each other. Yeah,
they're both really good at encouraging each other because he was, like you say, it been fired from his job playing piano at this restaurant, and he was then in some tacky electro band just because it was getting him money, and that
yeah,
was it,
some
and he
80s
hated it.
cover band. Yeah,
Yeah, and she was still working as a barista. Shout out baristas, in some place that obviously operates on the Hollywood filming
yeah,
stretch, but she wasn't getting anywhere in her acting career. So he inspires her and encourages her to write her own stuff and
yeah,
stop auditioning and create a show for yourself.
yeah. If you're not getting the
And
work, make it.
yeah, and that's what gets her break, because if someone sees that and then brings her in specifically for an audition because they've seen what she's done and liked it,
Yeah,
and she then inspires him to create his club and to follow that dream.
yeah,
Even though that becomes misguided to him, but they both encourage each other to go for it, because he ends up really successful in this band and then eventually creating his dream club, and she ends up becoming very successful actress
yeah,
in Paris. So they both inspired each other to do well,
yeah.
but in doing so have prioritized their careers and not the relationship.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the main points, the thing that I said I took away this time that I've not took away from any time I've watched it before, is obviously when I mentioned it briefly a second ago, where they're talking about how um relationships imprint on people. Like you can see how different people's personality have changed um through different relationships, and how you can see that little bits of people still remain in that relationship. So like say
Yeah,
for
yeah,
so there's times that I look at myself and there's things I realize, or say for example in one relationship, uh one person messed you around so much that it then carried on and you became really paranoid in your second relationship kind of thing, and then
mm,
that caused you to mess up that relationship. So that's one thing that became evident to me the whole way through, was how relationships can imprint on you for the better and for the worse. So obviously they were both imprinted in the fact that they got each other to those goals. She imprinted the sign, which in the end, looks great, and stuff like that. Probably the way they acted changed, both the way they both acted towards people changed, and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
Throughout. So I think that was one of the actual main things I took away um for this from watching it this time around, which I haven't got away from before. Maybe that's because I'm older. Maybe that's because I've started to see these things more in my own life, that you kind of go, oh, right, okay, I see how that kind of works out, or I see that how um we kind of let people into that amount, and how then people can shape us when we make it all about them, and what you're left with in the end is just little remnants of what they've put in you, whether that be good or whether that be bad.
yeah. It's an interesting point. It's something I hadn't really thought of while watching it.
I might
Obviously,
have
it's the
just have
first
been
time I've
in
seen
that
it.
place, Martin.
Quite possibly, quite possibly. Um, but no, you're 100% right in saying that in relationships, not even it doesn't even necessarily have to be
Romantic.
romantic
Yeah.
relationships, even friendships and
Yeah.
different relationships. Just
Yep.
when you're in whatever relationship with people, once that relationship separates for whatever reason, people leave imprints on other people,
Yeah.
Whether that's even if that is remnant, sometimes there's just something that someone sparks off in someone, or whatever,
Yeah.
that remains after they're gone. So you're right.
Yep. That's.
We're getting quite deep and profound here.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought, and that was the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because I thought, you know what, we'll get this. This could get quite deep, because obviously we've both been in relationships where, without speaking out of school or whatnot, things have happened in those relationships where we've obviously became unhappy, and then you kind of start to question yourself and start to question your own personality, but it turns out it's not actually something that's of you. It's something which you've still working on from a previous relationship that's kind
Mm.
of not not messed you up, but kind of put a bit of a wobble, or something that you don't like, or something that, because we've allowed people who we shouldn't have given so much influence to that influence.
Yeah, I mean, I think relationships are hard, and um, sometimes, like you say, for the good or the better,
Mm.
for the good or the better, for better or for worse.
Yes.
Um,
And that's one of the things that this film does. It certainly pulls no punches when it comes to showing you about how hard relationships are. It's not this um classic movies thing where
yeah,
people get together and somebody tries to break them up, but they'll never break up because they're in love and
yeah.
all this
I
kind of
think
stuff.
that's why this movie did hit me a bit in an unexpected way, because it did remind me of past relationships where things were going great, um, and then, like you say, things just get in the way, and when things start to fall apart,
Yeah.
and you see that it's that the end is nigh. But you know what I mean,
Yeah.
when you see things are going wrong, um, it's not easy to watch
Yeah.
from in a movie sense. Watching it
Yeah.
wasn't easy, and because of that, it reminds you
Yeah.
of the past, and
Like,
you do go, yeah, that's not
yeah.
easy at all. I
Yeah,
don't want to see it.
like I've been on both sides of that, in the sense of, you, when you've been in it and you are kind of going, right, okay, this, the end is nigh, kind of way that you're putting that kind of stuff. And then I've been on the other end of it where you don't see it coming, and it just, like, but it isn't until way after that you kind of go, actually, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And like, there is so many times, like, you can relate stuff to it. Like I've said previously on this pod, is that there is so many times you can relate stuff that was bad about your, like, relationship to a previous relationship, and you're like, oh, so that's why that's like that, and that's why it's birthed like that, which is why, you shouldn't jump from relationship to relationship, because that way you don't work on anything. Um,
yeah,
you can't work on yourself, and stuff like that, which is, I think,
yeah. I mean,
which
I think,
which is the way round of, obviously, this whole leaving imprints and finding out who you are. I mean, that was one advice that I gave to someone when they broke up with someone this past year, and they've been going out with for several years, and I was like, well,
mm,
I think the main thing you need to do is just don't jump straight into another relationship. Get to know who you are, and
yeah, exactly.
go from there, because it's only when you realize who you are is then you can realize who actually the right person to be with is.
Yep, absolutely. And I think every relationship I've been in afterwards, I've certainly learned
Yeah,
a lot. And whether that's learned about myself or things I need to change about myself,
yeah,
or just things that I would say, well, either I wouldn't do that in the future, or that's an alarming sign that I didn't pick up on last time,
yeah.
and I would be able, you just learn one what in hindsight, and that doesn't always happen immediately afterwards.
No, no, no. It
That's
can be
why you're saying,
years. It can be
yeah,
years.
that's what I'm saying. You were right in saying it's you really shouldn't jump straight into another relationship all the time, because you do need a bit of time to actually self-evaluate and
Yeah,
find out who you are, and find out what went wrong and why it went wrong.
yeah,
And then once you know these things, you grow as a person.
yeah. Because, I mean, there's a certain relationship that I was in where I, for years, up for several years or months or whatever after it happened, I was constantly blaming that person, and blaming them for it, because it was them who ended it. It was, this, that, and the next thing. But it wasn't until you took a step back to think, well, I did this, I shouldn't have done this, the way I acted here was wrong and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I think you really have where you really mature and stuff is when you can take that time and realize that, do you know what? I'm actually not perfect, and yeah, that
Yeah.
person may have been right, but I wasn't right at that time.
Yeah, you're right,
And that
100%.
person and that person may also be wrong. Like,
Yeah,
there's a load. There's so many things you need to figure out. But I think as long as you not put yourself first and be selfish, but if you put thinking about who you are first, then you'll come in and out of relationships a lot better than you would if you didn't.
yeah.
Kind of stuff.
And I think self-evaluation is important and interesting, because I remember in different points of my life feeling at certain points thinking that, oh, no one would ever love me,
Mm.
and feeling at other points in my life like I'm
How,
God's gift.
yeah,
Like
why is nobody?
have the
Why are
biggest
people not feeling
have
themselves? Something?
have the
Yeah,
biggest hit for myself and think I'm this amazing guy,
yeah,
and to actually step back and evaluate yourself and to go, yeah, well, I'm definitely not Mr. Perfect like I used to think I was, which
yeah.
was so wrong.
Mm.
Like, I totally was not. And actually bring myself down a few pegs, but also know on the flip of that I'm not worthless. I've got worth,
Yeah,
and to find that balance in actually this is who I am, and to, what I mean, know your worth but not be overhyping yourself and all that stuff. To find who you are and to find that balance
yeah,
is important, because it's not good to have to be either way, to have that
yeah.
seesaw thing.
Mm.
It's good to be balanced. So yeah.
That is very well put, Martin. I think that's very good advice for people who may be listening to this and going, I do go from relationship to relationship and I can't ever seem to get anything work. Or even if there's young people listening to this, I think it gives a good insight onto what to expect, and know that it's not going to be all sunshine and daisies. And that just because you're single and it may seem like that, there isn't any options on the horizon, that it doesn't mean that it makes you any less of a person. And it doesn't mean that you need to rush into something. Never rush into something. Always take the time to
Yeah.
see if it's
Yeah.
right. I'm not saying that, if you meet someone when you're 11 and you're with you can not be with that person for the rest of your life. That's quite possible. But also, don't make things too serious too fast. No, I think that's good advice, and I think if people watch this film, I hope that that's what they can actually take away. I mean, that's one of the first times I've actually taken that away from this film, but hopefully if somebody's listening to this
Yeah.
podcast and they can go, oh, right, okay, that's quite a good idea. Maybe I'll move from there. So it's not only movie reviews you're getting here at Movie Probe, it's also life lessons.
It's life lessons.
Yeah.
Where
This is life.
what? Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Sometimes we review films, and what comes out of it is important messages we feel people need to at least consider.
So if you would like to contact the Agony Ants at Movie Probe, just find us at agonyant@movieprobe.com.
Agony uncles.
Oh, I'm sorry. Agony Uncles at movieprobe.com.
Yeah.
It's not a real address anyway, so.
Yeah, that's cool. Anyway,
yeah.
we've went off on a wee bit of a tangent. It was a good tangent that we have done.
Well, I actually think that's quite a nice place to leave it, Martin.
Yeah, I agree. That was good.
You've had your movie, you've had your advice. There's your dinner.
There's your dinner.
There's your dinner. No dessert. So, Martin, we'll just do the usual here and give me a rating out of 10 for that, sir.
Yeah, so all things considered with this film, I did enjoy it. But as you say, it was this really strange tone that I've never experienced before, and although I think it was done really well, as I said at the beginning, I think you need to be in the right mood for this movie. It's certainly not a film I'd put on all the time. But I would rewatch it.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling to put together a rating, but I think I will go for 7.5 as my
All right.
rating. I think I did enjoy it, and
Mm.
it was really good,
Mm-hmm.
but just the sort of genre or type of film, I don't know. I know there's
You're not
loads
a
of films.
Nazi fella, are you?
Yeah, I can appreciate it, but not on such a strong level of, oh, it's so good, I have
Yeah.
to, it's sort of this masterpiece. I really enjoyed it, sure.
Well, I mean,
But yeah,
I went and saw it like 4 times at the cinema. I really
yeah.
enjoyed it when it came out. I don't actually fully know why, but um, maybe it was these underlying reasons that I talked about on the podcast. But
Yeah,
because of that, I'm gonna give it an 8. Um,
yeah. That's a good rating. I'd say it's a fair
I'll
rating.
stick with its IMDb rating, which is an 8.
Yeah.
Um,
See, these
so
podcasts, when we watch these certain films and we talk about it, you may think we're just giving you guys some life lessons, but really it's therapy for both of us.
do you know what? You're actually probably right.
Yeah, that's why.
I was just thinking about some of the stuff we talked about, and then it's like the Inside Out podcast, the Greatest Showman one. Is there any other ones we got relatively deep on?
I can't remember now. I can't remember what we've got.
To be fair, I reckon, see, if we were to watch Pixar movies, then like just
Oh
constantly
yeah.
Pixar movies, I think would constantly be deep. I seen a guy on TikTok. If you want to follow me on TikTok, Stuart Ryan Cinnamon. Anyway, but I seen a guy on TikTok whose wife was making him like he'd never seen like any Disney. I'm not sure if it's Disney or just Pixar movies, or
Right.
like he hadn't seen certain ones, but they were making him watch Up. So it's got it in.
Oh.
And I was just watching it, and it got to the bit. It got to the end of what is the epilogue, and he sat there with a glass of wine in his hand. And they had to stop the film to give him a minute. He's just like, "Can I have a minute?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "This film better get funny real fast."
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I don't want to start talking about Up just yet
No.
because you never know. But yeah, Up is meant to be a kids' film, and it is a kids' film or family film. But like you say, the first opening epilogue bit is heartbreaking. My
Yeah.
goodness.
I've only ever seen that film once, it's one that I really want to go and watch again, but I'm like, do I want to put myself through that? But anyway, moving on, Martin. What are we going to be discussing next week? What have you pulled out your wee bag of tricks for me this week? Bearing in mind you've got 2 left,
Okay.
I
Well,
think.
if it's 2 that I have left,
I
I
think
know
it's
what
2.
I know what 2 I'm gonna do. If I might have more, but if it's more, then it's
This
more.
is when even past this, it's constantly you're gonna text me and be like, "Here, watch this. Here, watch this. Here, watch this."
Yeah, I know.
Because
Um,
I'll do it. I'll do it. Unlike some people, when you tell them to watch something, you know.
Here, you talking about me?
Aye.
I've watched some things.
Anyway, hit me.
I had 2 in my head that I hadn't quite
I think I know what
decided.
one of them is, but I'll wait
Yeah,
and see.
you'll know one definitely,
Okay, fully know
and
one.
the other one I don't think you'll know.
Oh.
It's an obscure one,
Oh
and
gosh.
most of the audience won't have seen it.
Also, this
Possibly
is a
all of
chance
the
for us
audience.
all to watch it together.
So yeah, and I'm gonna go with this. Okay, I'll go with the obscure one now,
Okay.
and we'll do the one that you definitely know what it is last. Oh, I say that I could pick something else, but anyway. Okay, so the film that we'll watch, and I really hope that the audience can get behind me and
I
watch
thought you were
this
gonna
as
say,
well.
I really hope that you've not seen it.
No, I really hope. Well, you might have seen it. I don't think you
I
have.
don't know.
I really hope that the audience can get behind me and watch this as well before listening to the podcast, and also
That's
come
a
back
hint,
and
by
listen
the
to.
way. That's a
Yeah,
hint.
it is a hint, and also come back and listen to the podcast, because if the podcast doesn't do well because I picked obscure one, it just means that there'll never be any obscure things picked because the podcast doesn't do well. So
I get bragging rights. No, I'm kidding. We don't have bragging rights.
So no, we don't. So the film It's a Netflix. It's a film on Netflix.
Oh, here we go.
It's, I
I'm getting it
think
on.
it's. I think it's one of. It's either the biggest, if not one of the biggest, crowd-funded movies of all time,
All right.
and it is Code 8, starring Stephen Amell and Robbie Amell.
Right. Okay.
It's on Netflix. It's what they did for this movie was they originally shot like a 5 minute no, I say version of the film, like a 5 minute scene of the film they wanted to make, and it was called Code 8, which is obviously the title of the film, and they released it on Kickstarter, I think it was, and so they showed that and said, we want to make this movie, but we need crowdfunding for it, and it was the most supported crowd-funded movie ever, and they were able to, I believe that's true, I'll need to research that, but that's what I heard.
I believe it's true. I need to research it.
Yeah. And then they were able to make the full feature-length movie. Yep, which was originally released, obviously, in America when it first got released in select cinemas, and then it was good enough that Netflix picked it up, and it's on Netflix in the UK and around the world, I believe.
Okay.
So it's a movie that I was really excited about. But I'd wanted to watch it from the first time I'd seen their clip that they played before. I'd seen that clip and went, "Oh, that's awesome!"
Did you fund it? Did you help fund? Did you throw in a chuck in a buck?
I would love to say that I did, but I did not. I
you were
confess.
a poor man at the time.
But I was poor, and I've been burned before. I've paid money, and I'd say quite a fair chunk of money to kickstart a film which has been shot and is still in development hell.
And I thank you for that, Martin. It will come out one day, I promise you.
No, the movie that I did help crowdfund was The Drowning of Arthur Braxton, directed by Luke Cutforth, who is he's a UK YouTuber.
Oh, that's what you get from YouTube.
Well, this is the thing. He's
I say
starting
that
up
like
his own.
I don't buy YouTube.
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Him and people have started up like a film company. I think it's called Fireflight. I'm talking off the top of my head. I believe that's what it's called. And so they crowdfunded. They got a lot of money for it. I put money in. I put in £50.
Oh,
a lot of money. A lot of money.
What?
I'm still waiting on my. And
what
it's getting
you get
made.
Back for that?
I can't remember if my name's in the credits or not. Believe me, this was years ago. I don't remember now.
Oh, right, okay.
And
I'm
still waiting for the YouTube. He's gonna. Anyone who the tier that I went for means that you get like a personalized video message and stuff, but that was only going to get done after the film's released, and it's still not done yet.
Oh, he's congy.
But it's in development hell. The amount of stuff they've done, all to do with the editing, the sound, and it's all edited. But they were having one of the top guys I can't remember who it was now, who worked on like these top films to do stuff, and it didn't work out, and had to go to somebody else, but they're still working on it. It won an award at a film festival, although it wasn't finished. Anyway, we're not doing that one. We're doing Code 8.
We're doing Code 8. Netflix movie. Code 8.
And
not the Netflix movie. A movie on Netflix.
It's a movie on Netflix. It's called Code 8, starring Stephen Amell, who plays the Green Arrow in the Arrow series,
and his brother, who is in one of the American Pie movies. I
think they're actually cousins, not brothers.
Oh, I think. And his cousin, who is in one of the American Pie movies. Maybe two of the American Pie movies.
Yeah, he was also in Arrow for a bit as a different character.
He was also in other things, but I can't remember.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's I'm looking forward to you seeing it.
That goes.
And I hope you guys watch it as well. So that's what we'll be reviewing next week. It's Code 8.
We'll put a post on the page referring to, just to remind you all, get it watched, and I'll come to each and every single one of your houses.
I might possibly even like post the movie poster so you know what to look for, because it's not a well-known film.
No. But anyway, I believe that is the show for another week. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can find us at all of our social medias via the link tree, which is in the box. What's it called?
The show notes.
Show notes. The show notes of this podcast. We are looking forward to bringing you more cinematic content soon. So make sure you keep it locked with your boys. But like I say, that's the end of another episode for another week. Shout out this week goes to my dog.
Mags?
Yeah, Mags, she gets a shout out because she slept in my room last night and she never does that. So thanks, Mags. Anyway.
Well, that was nice of her. Anywho, This is a fun way to finish this off. Let's just round it up before we waffle on any longer. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you next week when we do.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye.